Ah, don't mind me. Just taking a glance at the halls where I once grew up to learn. To become a functioning member of society. Well, not much has changed since then. They sent us here to become perfect members of a functioning society. You can see how well that worked out. Well, I ask you, what if there was such a place? A place where you can go to learn, to become, well, perfect. Well, dear viewers, there is such a place. It's called the Perfect School. Welcome back, Goosebumps fans, to Goosebumps Friday. Now tonight, I have something a little bit different than what I've been usually doing. This is a Goosebumps episode that is not based on the original 62 Goosebumps books. This is an episode based on Tales to Give You Goosebumps, The Perfect School. Yes, that's right. This is an episode based on one of the short stories from the Goosebumps anthology books, The Perfect School. Now, the thing about this episode that kind of irks me, and I should mention this before we start, the DVD version uses the cover for The Haunted School, and I was a bit disappointed because I thought I would be getting an episode of The Haunted School, which was one of my favorite books in the original series, and that's not what I got, so that's one demerit right there, guys. Frankly, a lot of the episodes that were based on the short stories really suck, and this one is no exception to that in my opinion, but it is probably one of the better ones that are based on short stories, because there's a lot of ones based on the short stories that are just pure garbage. And this one is at least average. So let's get into The Perfect School. We open up on a dark, stormy night where a young child hides in his room from a mysterious intruder. After a few minutes of suspense, we learn that this mysterious intruder is really our protagonist of the episode, Brian O'Connor, played by Sean Roberts, who is simply pulling a little prank on his little brother. Fun fact, this kid would grow up later to play Albert Wesker in the Resident Evil movies. So it turns out that Brian is a bit of a troublemaker, and his parents have had enough of his antics. So they've decided that this was the last straw, and send him away to a special school.
The perfect school. Why settle for anything less than perfect? Are they kidding?
On the bus, Brian makes friends with the obvious cool kid CJ, played by Daniel Lee, and pretty much makes friends instantly. I mean, look at this guy. He's got the sunglasses, the comic book, the casual nod. Now that guy is cool. They arrive at the school and find that it's a very orderly place. It's here where we're introduced to the headmaster, a prim and proper gentleman with a superiority complex, and in my opinion, a very underutilized character within the entirety of the episode. We never really learn this dude's name, he's just the headmaster. Once inside the school, all the students are ordered to give up their personal belongings, which apparently includes retainers for some reason. Brian has an altercation with one of the students mopping the floor, resulting in that student having his program accelerated and being dragged out of the room. Clearly, something's very off about the perfect school. Brian meets another kid at the perfect school, Joe, played by J.J. Stalker. Unlike most of the other students, he seems to be happy here and is kind of set up to be the teacher's pet, leading Brian to treat him with a bit of suspicion. As the episode progresses, Brian experiences a lot of perfect experiences here at the perfect school. No slouching, no elbows on the table, no talking, no spitting, all that wonderful pointless bullshit.
You can eat this?
What? And apparently no sharing either.
But what's really strange is the classes. Instead of actual lessons, it appears to be a very strange questionnaire, leaving Brian and CJ very confused as to the purpose of this. That night, Brian meets up with the bully kid he had an altercation with the day before. He seems a bit different now, and apologizes for the rudeness from the altercation with the day before. At this point, Brian has had enough of this shit and decides it's time to get the hell out of here before they brainwash him too. He makes a run to the fence to find out that it's electrified and apparently hooked up to an alarm system.
Who is it? We don't know, sir. Fine.
After a long, tense scene where Brian pulls off his best Sam Fisher impression, he overhears the headmaster talking with one of the prefects.
Whoever it is may already be gone, sir. No one's escaped from the perfect school. No one ever will.
Just as the staff begin knocking down students' doors, Brian thankfully manages to make it to his room just before he's busted. The next day, Brian talks with Joe again, who knows all about his failed escape attempt, and Joe chastises him for being so reckless. Joe suggests a really deliberate and accentuate plan to escape, but Brian is a little skeptical of his wording, as he believes that Joe might be a snitch, considering he just got moved up to a bigger room. Curious as to if Joe is a snitch, he knocks on his door and tries to get him to come with him on an exploration of the school, to which he denies. So Brian explores the school and heads to the headmaster's office, where he attempts to call home, and also discovers that the headmaster keeps tissue samples on his desk. Unfortunately, before he gets a chance to talk to anyone, he's caught by the staff and has his program accelerated. Sent back to his room, he falls asleep only to be chloroformed by a mysterious stranger, leaving us with the titular to be continued.
Oh, did I forget to mention this was a two-parter?
Yeah, we've got a lot more shenanigans in store for you in this episode. After a freaky dream sequence where it appears Brian is being measured for something, he wakes up the next morning as if nothing happened. That day in class, after observing Joe play kiss-ass with the teacher again, Brian and CJ begin to think that it's possible that Joe is a spy working with the school, but their talk breaks one of the teacher's golden rules.
That's it!
Man, this is the most foreboding principal's office I've ever seen. In the waiting room for the principal's office, he finds Joe, who apparently was sent there after taking too long to get some water from the hall. It's here where Joe admits to Brian that he's been pretending to get along with everyone so he can finally sneak away without anyone suspecting him. But Brian is still skeptical, thinking that Joe is really a snitch. After Joe is called in to see the headmaster, Brian decides he's going to try to make another run for it and starts exploring more of the school. He manages to track down a computer and hack into it in one of the offices, and breaks into their mainframe.
Jesus fucking Christ. Brian is one of the most badass Goosebump protagonists I've ever seen in one of these episodes. Holy shit, dude.
While browsing through their files, he notices an area of the school marked nursery, which he finds curious. In another suspenseful scene where he's almost busted by a prefect, Brian manages to duck into the air vents where he manages to hide until nightfall.
I know what a TV dinner feels like.
Later that night, he meets up with CJ cleaning the stairs and talks with him about escaping. But he needs a distraction.
Okay, this has gotta be the lamest scene in this episode, but also the funniest because it makes no goddamn sense.
He did it.
You! Your history!
Fight, fight, fight!
All you guys are going on report. If you don't stop that right now!
I mean, those prefects would have saw this at the very least. Who wrote this?
While waiting for CJ to meet him in the laundry room to escape, Brian is cut off by more prefects, so he manages to duck into one of the rooms marked nursery. It's there where he discovers the secret behind how the school is making kids perfect. Yep, turns out they're clones. And apparently Brian's clone is pretty much done. In fact, he's so close to being done that his eyes open up right in front of Brian. He runs out of the room to find CJ, who apparently has a new escape method. Brian follows him into an unmarked room that he opens with a key card. Okay, that's the first sign that something is wrong here, Brian. Yeah, as it turns out, CJ was the snitch the entire time, and Brian could never see it because CJ is just too cool for school. And apparently we also find out that the perfect school does not kill the original kids that it's cloned. They just lock them up in one huge cell.
I mean, I'm not one to suggest that an immoral cloning facility should kill children, but what's the point of keeping them alive? I mean, you already cloned them, might as well just kill them off. I mean, you could be using this space for something else, and...
Also, now that I think of it, if they're going to be cloned, what's the point of all the rules on being perfect? To keep up the charade, I guess. But still, it seems a bit pointless. In fact, the only thing that seemed worth their time in doing was forcing them to answer that questionnaire and making them clean the place. Anyway, Brian manages to knock down CJ and escape because he's pretty damn cool himself, before he runs into his clone again that has somehow made it out of that tank from a few scenes ago. The screen fades to white, and suddenly, Brian is back home dressed as perfect as he could be at dinner with his family. It appears that the perfect school has done their job, and clone Brian is home where he really needs to be, and the real Brian is locked up in school. But the episode doesn't go there. It does something that I wouldn't expect, and frankly, that adds a few points for me in this episode.
Operation Rescue. Don't worry, guys. I'll get you out of there. It's the last thing I do. I'll get you out of there.
It turns out that Brian did escape, pretending to be the clone. Don't ask me how, but he managed to switch places with the clone, and clone Brian was the one that made it into the jail cell, and is still locked up to this day. And that's not all. He's hacked into the perfect school mainframe, and is aiming to blow the lid on them.
And that was the perfect school. Gotta say, did not live up to its name. Is not that perfect of an episode. In fact, it's kind of boring. Now, I've praised a lot of episodes for being slow, but also having really great ambiance. This episode doesn't do that. It doesn't really have that good of ambiance in it. I mean, there is one scene in this where Brian is walking through the halls and he hears the whispers of kids, and there's kind of like a good little track in the background, but that's about it. Also, the music in this isn't amazing. There are a lot of kind of military tracks that get you amped up, especially in that scene where Brian gets caught, but otherwise, I'm not really compelled. Yeah, there's a lot. Most of this episode is just Brian running around the school. The acting in this isn't really that great either. A lot of it is just very wooden. I'd say Brian and CJ are just probably the worst in this, especially CJ. A lot of wooden delivery. And the adult actors aren't too great either. Honestly, the best actor in this was probably Joe. He doesn't really do like anything amazing or anything, but he's a lot more competent than a lot of these people in this episode, at least in my opinion. Frankly, the only reason I really like this episode is that I think Brian is a good character. He doesn't give up, he perseveres, and he does a lot of shit that a lot of Goosebumps protagonists would not do. He's not a coward. Gotta give him props for that. He fights his fights head on. And honestly, this episode's ending made me like the episode a lot more. It makes me want to see a sequel to this. You know, one that gets to the fucking point and doesn't dawdle, you know? We need to see Brian fight the perfect school. That's the episode I want to see. Turns out I didn't really have much to say about this. It's kind of a meh episode for me. There's that one aspect that I like, but that's it. So I'm gonna have to give this episode a 5 out of 10. Closer to a 6 than a 4. 5 out of 10. Anyway, guys, that is going to do it for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed me covering The Perfect School. I hope you stick around for when I cover more